Okay, I'm at this last section now called The Weight of Truth. And there's a gorgeous irony to the lead narrative in this text, which is the story called The Things They Carried. Because the things the men carry are all things of all different kinds of weight, which foot soldiers do actually carry. And as you saw in Platoon, when Chris is in the jungle, he's carrying a full pack, and it nearly kills him. And Elias, empties his pack and says, "You didn't need this. No, why did you bring this? No, you don't need that." And lightens his pack, and he says, "Okay, I'll carry this. I'll hump it for you this time, but never again. Check with me because you need to know what you can leave behind and what you can't." And so this is really what's crucial, because O'Brien is always going to make this play. He's going to talk about the physical reality, and he's going to talk about the metaphorical reality. That is, what's because it's very much real too. It's like saying, the physical reality is reality, and what's in our heads is not reality. It's like, no, what's in your head makes reality. So, on pages 1 to 2, she often quoted. This is Jimmy Craw, the lieutenant's girlfriend. She often quoted lines of poetry. She never mentioned the war except to say, "Jimmy, take care of yourself." The letters weighed 10 ounces. So the letters themselves, the 10 ounces is a lot, right? I mean, it's more than half a pound. That's a lot to carry physically, especially in these conditions. I mean, you're just in any conditions, carrying extra weight like that, it'd be. But in this condition, this kind of condition, in this heat with this tropical environment, it can be deadly. So, especially people from a cool climate. So O'Brien reminds us of these two things. There's a physical weight to the war, which can be unbearable, and it's scientific. How much does it weigh? But then, of course, there's the emotional weight, and this is the burden, which is even heavier. And the lieutenant's correspondent will never, for instance, tell him that she loves him. She will say, "Take care of yourself." Is that a burden? Does that mean that it lightens his load emotionally, or does it heavy up his load? Right. So these are heavy letters, right? And the men carry what they must. On page 2, he says the things they carried were largely determined by necessity. Okay, well, that makes sense if we're thinking about the physical stuff. You have to carry water. You have to carry salt pills, salt tablets. You got to carry food and so on. But what kind of necessity are we talking about? If we're talking about emotional necessity, that's something else indeed. And you think about this, think about the stuff that you carry with you, say, in a purse or in a bag. You might have in your bag a tag on it with a little dangly thing, which your friend gave you, and it's fun and it's cute and it makes you smile when you see it. And but most importantly, your friend gave it to you, so you carry that. It's like, well, why? It's adding to your load. It's like, and it isn't though, because when you see it, you look at it and you think, oh, hey, that makes me smile when I see it. I'm like, oh yeah, there's my friend, right? So, right, is that heavying you up, or is it lightening you up? Which one is it? As a hedge against bad times, however, Kiowa also carried his grandmother's distrust of the white man, his grandfather's old hunting hatchet. Necessity dictated, on page 3. So here is this kind of necessity. It's like, remember, O'Brien is going to start off with something and he's going to break it almost immediately and say, yeah, you weren't expecting this, were you? It's like you were thinking that it was necessity, physical necessity. It's like, but what about this? Because Kiowa is Native American, he is going to, so he's got his grandmother's distrust of the white man and a hunting hatchet. It's like, what's that for? Because he needs to kill something? Is he carrying it for safety? Because he's got a weapon. He's got weapons of all kinds. I mean, they're in a war zone. So is that also about safety? I mean, he's got the distrust from the grandmother and the weapon from the grandfather. Maybe these balance each other out. So this necessity is, you got to carry this because you're afraid of the white man. You don't trust them. With you comes, as the world of current theory would say, all of your baggage, which means your angers and your hatreds, your suspicions, everything basically that is in you. And for O'Brien, this means that they are loaded down by the expectations and the burdens that America lays on them as Americans, which he represents on page 15. It was the great American war chest, the fruits of science, the smokestacks, the canneries, the arsenals at Hartford, the Minnesota forests, the machine shops, the vast fields of corn and wheat they carried like freight trains. They carried it on their backs and shoulders. And for all the ambiguities of Vietnam and all the mysteries and unknowns, there was at least a single abiding certainty that they would never be at a loss for things to carry, on page 15. What an amazing passage this is, because oh God, it's like, yeah, whenever I read this, the hair just stands up on the back of my neck, because it's like, you can imagine, here are these men, and they're just slowly being bent over by the burden of the greatness, quote unquote. I use this term ironically, that is America. The business of war is one for the soldier of exhaustion, of endless strain, of anxiety, a terrible fear, of apprehension. It is the soldier's job to keep on going, to keep carrying this burden. This is the struggle, ultimately. And for O'Brien, if you look at the documentary Vietnam, which is recently done by PBS, you'll see, that he still feels that the hardest thing he ever did was to get up every day and go walking in Vietnam. Okay, have a look at these last points that I've got here.